Good morning, my friends. I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to be learning chapter 5 in the laws of prayer. Over here in today's Rambam, we're going to be learning all about 8 things that are going to make your prayer so much more enhanced and so much more meaningful. And essentially making sure that our prayer is going to be accepted before God in the best possible way. So the Rambam tells us that there are 8 things that we should be careful about while we are praying, which go as follows. First of all, we should be standing up. Now, when we're talking about prayer over here, just for the info, we're not talking about the entire prayer. We spoke about the Shema, that was in the previous chapter. Now we're talking about the actual Amidah, the 19 blessings that we say when at the height of the prayer, which is called the Amidah, which literally means to stand up. So number 1 is to stand. That is the first part of the first concept that we have to note. Number 2 is that we should be facing the temple. If we're in this part of the world, that means we face east. Number 3, we should prepare our body, that we should make sure that we're proper for prayer, as we're going to see. Number 4 is proper clothing. Number 5 is standing in the proper place. Number 6 is to control one's voice. 7 is bowing, and 8 is prostration, as we shall see. Standing. What do we mean by standing? So first of all, that when a person is praying the Amidah and is standing and is about now to start praying this part of the prayer, when we're coming to the 19 blessings, or as also called Shmona Esrei, which is actually 18 blessings translated, because initially there were 18 and then they added on a 19th prayer blessing, as we spoke about earlier on. But we should stand up, we should be standing up, and if we're not able to stand, so then it's okay. But essentially we should be standing. If someone is on a boat or traveling in a car, so if it's safe to stand, so then they can stand. But if not, then it's okay, they should just sit. Then number 2, as we said, that we should be facing the temple. So if we're outside of Israel, so that means we're in Pensacola, Florida, and we are here in the west of the world, so we should be turn our face towards east and pray towards Israel. Now, what about if we are inside Israel? So that means we're in Israel. Where do we face now? So we face towards Jerusalem. So if you're in the north, you face south. If you're south, you face north, towards the center of Jerusalem. If you're within Jerusalem, so where do you face then? You face towards the temple. If you're in the temple, you face towards the Holy of Holies. And if someone doesn't know where east is, for instance, let's say someone is on a plane, or someone is on a boat, and it's hard to find out because it keeps on turning. So if you're going to start praying and it's going to keep on turning, so how do you pray? So you just focus your heart towards God and you pray. The preparation of one's body, what is implied? When a person is going to do the Amidah, is going to start praying towards God, we should put our feet together, we should face our eyes low, as if we're looking at the ground, and our heart should be faced upwards towards God. And we should stand with our hands crossed, and we should imagine that we are as if servants before our master. And we should not put our hands on our hips, which is not a sign of modesty, subjugation towards God. Proper clothing. What is that? So first of all, a person should make sure that he is wearing proper clothing, he is properly clothed in a nice way, so that we should come and bow to God in holiness, as it says in the verse. And we should not be standing with our heads uncovered and not with our feet uncovered. If the way of that place where we live is that if you go to visit a king, you go and wear shoes. And also you shouldn't be distracted by other things that you might be holding. For instance, a person shouldn't hold a Torah in his hand while praying, because it's going to be distracting. And again, also if someone is carrying a heavy weight, whether on his shoulder or on his head, depending on the weight, he should at least take it off and put it on the ground in front of them, so that we should be in a proper mind frame and a proper setup when we come to pray. And it says that the sages and their students would always pray with a talis, with a talit, which is a sign of when we enwrap ourselves in a talit and we are preparing ourselves for prayer. So it really puts us into the mode when we pray to God. Proper place. What is a proper place? So the Rambam says that it is meaning that we should be standing in a low place, which shows in our subjugation we shouldn't be standing high up. We shouldn't be standing on a chair or on a table, but rather we should be standing near a wall, and not just in the middle of the room. And interestingly enough, he mentions that there is a verse in Daniel which says, and he had windows open in his room facing Jerusalem. So if we have windows or doors that are facing, in our case, to east, so then we can open them up while we pray towards the east, or towards Jerusalem. And a person should have a specific place where he prays every time, and we should not be in a destroyed building or behind the synagogue, but rather we should be inside and facing the synagogue. And a person who is praying, we should not walk in front of them so as not to distract them. So, because we said that a person should be standing in a low place, so therefore we should not be standing on a high stage or anything like that while we pray, unless it is it's a place for itself. It's a big area. It's almost like another floor for itself. So then that would be okay. Now, what about if someone is working on a job and he is at the top of a tree and the time has come to pray? So what happens then? So it's best to go down off the tree or off the high wall where they're working at the construction site, and then only continue to, and then pray, and then go up. Versus the Shema, by the way, where in the Shema, the Rambam told us that it's okay to read the Shema on the top of the tree. But when it comes to the Amida, to the prayer of when we're praying to God and we're asking from God all our needs and we're praising Him, so then we should get off and do it properly. Unless it is a olive tree or a date or a fig tree, which are very hard to climb, so then we are able to stay and go down and pray up there. The next thing is a person should control their voice, meaning a person when they're praying the Amida should not pray very loudly, neither should they do it too silently, but rather they should pronounce all the words with their lips, to verbally say them, and say them in an undertone, in a hush. And you should not make his voice too audible unless the person is sick and they can't concentrate otherwise. But essentially, when we do the Amida, it is done quietly. Bowing. What do we mean by bowing? So there are certain points, actually 5 times within the prayer of the Amida, that we bow down. So that doesn't mean that we're bowing down flat on the ground, but rather it's a bow that we bow. There are in the beginning and in the end. In the first blessing of the Amida, we bow down twice, and then in the end of the Amida, and we do it twice, and then at the end, when we take 3 steps backwards, then we again bow. And as we go back, we walk backwards away from God. So we take 3 steps backwards and then we give a bow. And we bow first to the left side, then to the right side. And the reason we do it first to the left is because if we're standing in front of God, so then we want to bow towards, in God's point of view, so to speak, it should be to His right. So we do to our left, which is actually the right of the person who is in front of us. In our case, we're bowing to God. And so that's how we complete and finish the prayer in such a form. Whenever we bow, so we're saying that we should bow just our body, our back. So we should do it in a way that our spine protrudes a little bit and it makes us look like a bow. So we're actually turned. So it's not just a little bow, but rather it's an actual bow. And if a person is not able to do it, he's old or he's sick, so then as long as they're actually, straining themselves to bow, so then we're doing good. Then there is the last thing is the idea of prostration, which is an actual bowing down on all fours down onto the ground, which that was usually done in the temple, and over there it was done during prayer, and they would actually have their head on the floor. And this was a special prostration which was done after the Amida, after the prayer, and then they would bow down all the way on the floor. We don't do this all the time. We only do this once a year. It's actually coming up. On Yom Kippur, we bow down during the prayers of Yom Kippur, and we prostrate ourselves onto the ground on all fours, literally, and a sign of bowing down. But usually, we don't do this during the rest of the year. In the temple it was done, and over there it was even done onto a stone floor. If we're outside of the temple, when we bow down, we should make sure that it's not on a stone floor, because stone is one of the important materials which was used during idol worship. And we don't, God forbid, want that there should be any resemblance to our bowing down than to idol worshipping. So therefore we make sure that it's not on a stone floor, but rather we put something in between us, even if it's a tile floor, and to show that we're not bowing down to an idol, God forbid, but rather we are bowing down to God. So that is the chapter for today in Rambam, where we've learned of 8 things that make our prayer to be in the proper way, and that it should be a good prayer accepted by God in the way that our sages have taught us, which is the proper way of praying. So with that, we complete our chapter 5 of Rambam of the Laws of Prayer for today, and God willing, we will continue tomorrow. Have a very good one in the meantime.